The University of Maine's most famous alumnus is Stephen King. His books and the movies adapted from them have made him one of the most popular writers in the world. And in turn, fans, critics, and scholars have written millions of words about King and his stories.
But no one has ever gotten the access to King's work that was recently given to an English professor at UMaine. Her name is Caroline Bicks, and she has quite a story of her own. Caroline Bicks arrived on the University of Maine campus as the first Stephen King chair in literature. King himself had nothing to do with the position. The Harold Alphont Foundation endowed it, and Bicks herself was, perhaps somewhat surprisingly, mainly an expert on another hugely popular writer, William Shakespeare. Did you have any misgivings about the job? Did you think, they know I'm a Shakespearean expert, but they're going to drag me into Stephen King?
No, I would have loved that. No, if anything, I was told the opposite, which is this has nothing to do with Stephen King. He gave his permission to have his name used, but you should not initiate any contact. So I was happily doing my job at the University of Maine for 4 years before I got a phone call at home saying, "Hi, it's Steve King."
And you were a little surprised at the beginning when the university gave you those specific instructions. Don't reach out to him.
Well, I wasn't surprised per se. It was more just, oh, okay, a little disappointed. But, I understand. He's a private person.
And then the phone rang?
And then the phone rang.
Voice on the other end?
I was actually standing right there when I got the phone.
Hi, this is Steve King.
A cold call from Stephen King at my house. And he just said, I think it's time we met.
Professor Bicks invited King to speak to her students. An invitation he accepted. I have to laugh at your account of that in the book because the thing that you were the most nervous about was making sure that you kept a parking space that he could use.
I know. Well, because I wasn't supposed to tell anybody about the visit. And I'd been managing it for months by myself. So yes, for me, I decided I was going to fixate on making sure he had a parking spot because he insisted on driving himself. I said, I can come pick you up at your house. He says, nope, I'm going to drive myself and you can just hop in the car and show me where to park. And I'm thinking, okay, Stephen King, I'll hop in your car. And I should say, I'm a huge King fan, if that's not clear. So I started reading him when I was 12. And so part of my attraction to this job was just to have my name associated with one of my favorite living writers. Caroline Bicks started reading King as a teenager, first borrowing from the public library in Castine his book, Night Shift. I grabbed it because the cover was so shocking. I didn't know anything about Stephen King. And then I was pulled right in. The Boogeyman, story number 6. I still can't sleep next to an open closet. And from there, I just couldn't stop. And so part of this project for me as I've been writing this book has been understanding more why fear works on us and the purpose of a horror story as a way to metabolize our fears. A few years ago, Bicks was offered an extraordinary opportunity. She was invited to spend a year doing research in Stephen King's archives at his home in Bangor, the place that held all his drafts, manuscripts, personal notes, letters, and more. She was the first person outside of King's family and foundation granted that access. Now, King has written more than 70 books, so she decided to focus on 5. Carrie, Salem's Lot, Pet Sematary, The Shining, and the short story collection Night Shift. Because those were the ones I read when I was a teenager. Those are the ones that were still stuck in my head. The book she wrote about what she found and what she learned is called Monsters in the Archives, My Year of Fear with Stephen King. I wrote this book for a wide audience because I really feel like so many people love Stephen King and so many people would be interested in understanding how this master writer crafted these stories that have had such endurance. Bicks' research turned up some interesting discoveries, one of them about The Shining.
The only thing that can get a bit trying up here during the winter is a tremendous sense of isolation.
King's novel was turned into this classic movie, which, by the way, King really disliked.
So for The Shining, I got to read the first draft called The Shine, which is a completely different ending. It's divided up into acts and scenes. It's a play. And then I found out he was imagining a Shakespearean tragedy when he wrote The Shining. So that, as a Shakespearean, blew my head up in a different way.
Another surprise came from an early draft of Carrie, King's first published novel, which was made into this memorable film.
For Carrie, it will be a dream come true. For everyone else, it will be a nightmare.
Carrie was completely different the first draft. I mean, she's an alien with horns. But that became a story for me about how he understood how to change and craft a teenage girl.
Has he read your book?
Yes.
What did he say about it?
So he really, really likes it, and he posted that it was the best book about his writing process he's ever read.
You're a Shakespearean scholar. We're still reading and watching and touched by Shakespeare 400 years after the works were written. How long do you think Stephen King's works are going to be read and enjoyed?
I think just as long as Shakespeare's.
Really?
I really do. I really do. Maybe not all 70 of them. It's probably going to be 100 by the time he's done. You know what? I think The Shining is going to endure. He jokes and says they're going to remember the clown. They're not going to remember me. He thinks it's going to be it. It is also a terrifying one. But I wouldn't be surprised if people are reading and talking about The Shining 400 years from now.
What a testament to what he does. That's like a writer's playground, right? Being given access to all those works, and you're like in his world. It's so cool.
Yep, and the great thing is that he was writing on paper with a typewriter. So these early drafts exist. Nowadays, of course, writing on a computer, you just hit delete, you revise, you do it all on screen, and you don't have that paper record. So that's really cool for her. And I love that when she went back and read the books that she had read as a teenager, she tracked down the original or as close to the original paperback editions as she could find.
I love it.
Which is cool.
And the little Shakespearean ties in there.
Again, the name of Caroline Bicks' new book is Monsters in the Archive, and we have an extended version of our interview with her for you Stephen King completists, and we know you're out there.
Yes.
You're going to find that, as well as the interview that we just aired, all in the 207 section of our new Center Maine app or website.